All right. Great. Hi, all. So today, I want to talk about this slide, a long-tail distribution. I'm going to leave it up here because it's one of only a few slides I'm going to use today, and because I think it's really important to sort of see how this distribution works. The concept of the fat head versus the long tail is that the biggest challenges and opportunities tend to be on the left side, but the total area under the curve, in this case, the number of patients who need treatment options, can be larger over here on the right. The question is, how do we solve not just for the fat head, but for the long tail in treating disease? I'm going to tell a couple of stories, and let's look at the difference between them. A few years ago, I wanted to buy a bat house because I wanted to control mosquitoes at my house without sprays. That's a bat house on the left. I'd never actually seen one. I didn't really know how it worked. So I did what a lot of us do when we're looking for something we don't know anything about. I searched on Amazon. There were lots to choose from. I found this one, reasonable price, free shipping, two bed, two bath, eating kitchen. Sorry, bad joke. But it was going to show up at my door the next day. Impressive, right? And then I realized something interesting. Amazon wasn't just selling this bat house, they were making them. That's an Amazon Basics bat shelter. What does this tell us? Amazon had solved the long tail. You want it, they have it. In doing so, they'd become one of the biggest and most valuable companies in the world. The approach they took also allowed them to expand beyond e-commerce and beyond just products, a concept that we'll come back to later. They were a platform company. Second story. In late 2020, I suffered sudden sensorineural hearing loss. It was caused by nerve damage to my cochlear nerve right here, determined to be idiopathic. It was probably caused by a virus and related to the stress of working for Moderna and the vaccine readiness program. I'm very proud of that, but it was a very intense time. But we'll most likely never know the root cause. The nerve damage led to severe and near constant pain. Imagine an earache every day for the rest of your life, every moment that you're awake. And then imagine being told that you will probably always have that earache. You can remember a time before it, but you'll never be able to go back to that. I was determined to fix this. I worked with many of the best doctors. I had access, specialist scans, diagnostics. I was going to chase down every possible solution. We made lifestyle changes. My wife was phenomenal and worked with me through this. We moved across the country. We now live at altitude, which helps with some of my symptoms. From a medical perspective, after a ton of work and a lot of best efforts from many specialists, in the end, I was prescribed 1,200 milligrams a day of gabapentin. Gabapentin is a 30-year-old nerve pain blocker with negative side effects. At 1,200 milligrams a day, what I was prescribed, it's not advisable to drive a car. At 1,500, you're considered disabled. They had nothing else to offer me. There are more than 66,000 new cases of sudden sensory hearing loss annually in the United States. Many of them do not have the side effects I had, but overall, we have no standard of care. We use hearing aids, cochlear implants, painkillers. We had nothing that actually treats the underlying condition. Medicine is failing at the long tail. Amazon isn't. Why? The funnel. Anyone tired of this slide, right? The most famous slide in life sciences, the commonly accepted truth of the life science industry. Let's reorient here. Y-axis, number of drugs or medicines, x-axis, time split it by phase. We've all seen this different ways. What is this chart telling us, right? It's telling us that it takes billions of dollars and tens of thousands of compounds to come up with one new drug. So don't blame us for high drug prices. There are some big issues with the funnel, and we'll come back to this. It does describe, though, the prevailing, or certainly the historical view of our industry. That view is that it costs $2.6 billion to bring a new drug to market, and along the way, most drugs fail. It's the reason why we as an industry, companies, investors, analysts, capital allocation, are obsessed with the blockbuster. Blockbuster is a drug with over $1 billion annual sales. Now, with inflation, that's getting easier, but that's not a real solution here. The obsession with the blockbuster creates a number of negative side effects. While there are more clinical trials than there ever have been, they are still highly concentrated against a handful of targets that could give you a blockbuster. It'd be like the entire TV and film industry just made superhero movies. And sure, it feels like that sometimes. But there's actually a long tail there when we need it. When we need some HGTV or Netflix and chill, we can find what we want. And Netflix is actually a good example of a counterpoint to that blockbuster mentality. Netflix is a big catalog, it's intuitive, it's easy to search. It's an example like Amazon of solving for the long tail. And it put Blockbuster out of business, something that our industry, some companies will face over the next 10 years without innovation. So let's talk innovation. The future of medicine is in a combination of scalable platforms and personalized care, but right now they're difficult to bring to market because you need at least one blockbuster. At Moderna, for us, that famously became mRNA-1273, the COVID vaccine. But rewind the clock to 2019, and we were struggling with this exact issue. Our share price had dropped to about half of our IPO price, and there was one influential reporter who kept calling us the next Theranos. You know who you are. Boy, was that guy wrong. The other side of this is the numbers here, accurate or not, are most often used to defend high drug prices. That's actually the context of what this slide was originally created for. It feels a lot like Boeing before SpaceX came along. Launching rockets to space is super expensive. That's why we charge so much. What made it to space back then? Only the most expensive, highest ROI, biggest, highly funded satellites. In 2022, SpaceX will launch more weight to space than everyone else in the world combined, countries, companies, everybody. And they charge less than ever before, and that's before their next big platform comes online. Early leaders like Moderna's and others have cracked the funnel, but we need to shatter it. And we need to do that, we need to reorient away from drugs and towards platforms and technology. This is the most interesting SEC filing you're ever going to read, and I'll promise I get back to it. But first, let me tell you the story of how I joined Moderna. When I interviewed at Moderna back in early 2015, I did not know biotech. I was a technologist, I just sold my first company, and I asked friends around Boston, people in the industry, should I work for tech in biotech? I got a pretty consistent answer. You don't want to do tech in biotech. It's a backwater, it's a glorified help desk, it reports to the CFO, it reports to the facilities. Biotech exists to de-risk assets for big pharma. Tech isn't accretive to the balance sheet. Biotech doesn't really invest in tech, they just like the bio part. That was the feedback. Quick side note, the term biotech really means the use of biological technology. Today, it definitely does not mean the combination of biology and technology. It should. So when I interviewed with Stefan, CEO at Moderna, I asked him that question, are you going to invest in tech? And his solution to that question has now changed the course of history. His answer was, we are going to be the first tech biotech company. And we backed it up. Our pitch to investors that we are a digital company, that mRNA was like software, that we could scale like a tech company and have massive impact. So fast forward a few years, I think we did a pretty good job of being digital. We built this amazing facility in Norwood, ended up making the whole vaccine for the US. We baked digital into the company, enabled and empowered employees. I was lucky enough to be a part of all this. And definitely there were some things that we could have done better, but for blazing a trail in sort of this digital wilderness, I think we did a lot right. So let's come back to this SEC filing. I know you're all really excited about SEC filings. This is the timeline of Moderna's response to the first 60 days of the COVID-19 pandemic. And you can see here, we didn't even know what to call it yet. We were just calling it the novel coronavirus. On January 11th, China shared the genetic sequence for what would eventually be known as COVID-19. And 2 days later, Moderna had a vaccine. That vaccine is probably in about half of you here, that exact one. 25 days after sequence lock, Moderna had manufactured the first batch of clinical supply. 63 days after sequence selection, we kicked off the phase 1 trial. So, wait a second. But wait, this funnel tells us it should have taken years and hundreds of millions of dollars and tens of thousands of compounds to come up with that vaccine. It's a traditional model, right? How didn't it? The answer is pretty straightforward, but also hard to achieve. What do Amazon's Bat House and Moderna's mRNA vaccine have in common? Technology. They're both fundamentally products created by technology companies. The same technology concepts that allowed Amazon to profitably manufacture and sell a Bat House with free shipping enabled Moderna to sequence, manufacture, test, and commercialize a vaccine in record time. Technology does not care what industry you're in. It does not care what your product is. What does matter is who moves first, and who realizes the potential of technology to build scalable platforms before the rest of the industry. Let's talk Amazon, a company that I use a little more than I wish I did. Amazon originally got famous for tackling the long tail in books. Back in 2002, Jeff Bezos, this guy, not the cowboy hat wearing, rocket launching billionaire he is today, he sent a memo to his employees that outlined how to be a digital company. It's become a touchstone in the digital or tech industry, but this might be the first time it's come up in a biopharma conversation. The fundamental building block of any company, any product, is data. And data is the common language between teams, companies, clients, vendors, partners, etc. Jeff, we're not on a first name basis, but hey, this is my talk, mandated that teams allow other teams to call on their services digitally, turning the company into a series of services which could then be exposed. This memo changed Amazon. Instead of an e-commerce company known for selling books, it became a services business. What are those services? Selling stuff, hosting things, hosting servers. And each of those in turn became transformative to Amazon and really the world. They allowed other people to sell on their platform. They allowed other e-commerce companies, including Target, which at the time was bigger than them, to run on their e-commerce services. And then they went one layer deeper and allowed anyone to run anything they wanted on Amazon's scalable infrastructure, Amazon Web Services, which has now transformed the way the world works and scales and dramatically improved capital efficiency globally. We don't buy servers anymore, no CapEx. So this memo was 20 years ago, 5 years before the first iPhone. But today, our biotechs, big pharma, CDMOs, CROs, all look a lot more like businesses in the 90s. They don't look scalable, they're not built on platforms, and they're not microservice oriented. We have some catching up to do. So how do we do better and not end up like Blockbuster? How do we solve for the long-tail distribution, improve capital efficiency, increase the number of new drugs that come to market, improve margins, improve patient outcomes, and help save the world? Stop making your scientists do everything in Excel. Actually, stop making everyone do everything in Excel. Email, shared drives, paper SOPs. There are two huge problems with our current approach. It's massively inefficient and not scalable, and you're not going to lose your best people. Your best people want to solve problems. They do not want to spend their day typing things into Excel. And by the way, I love Excel. It has its place, but it's not how you manage your enterprise data or run your company. And for those of you sort of jaded from years of top-down technology projects, which promised a panacea but delivered nothing, that's not what I'm talking about here. Start small. Fix something. Kill off an Excel workbook with an integration. Implement a new tool for structured data capture or structured data management. Build on it. Get momentum. Get some functional leadership bought in and acting as advocates. Empower your workforce and your leadership to use digital to solve problems, not just keep asking for more headcount. Everyone will eventually figure this out. It will become the standard, normal approach to business. But the first companies to figure this out will have the biggest impact and build the platforms that others will then use. Data, all of our data, including clinical data, but also including everything else in the company, needs to be the central story. We need to share data in a service-oriented architecture. We need to externalize and productize those services. We need to build scalable technology solutions which empower all of our teams. And we need to kill off Excel. If we do this, if we fundamentally change the footing of the biotech industry or biopharma industry away from the manual, paper-based, CapEx, headcount-centric model we're in today, we can solve that long-tail distribution. We can reduce drug prices, improve pandemic response, improve global demographic equality. If that's not ambitious enough for you, I think we can do it in the next 5 years. The winners definitely will. Let's put the tech in biotech. Let's solve this. Thank you.